there, Tide fans. I'm Shawn Taylor, your host of Tide Talk. Down in Margaritaville, I got my buddy Maurice Booth. In here with me is my buddy Jimmy Messick with his new Papa J hat on. Make sure you get a close up on that, TJ.
Papa J
got
hat.
his new Papa J hat on.
Proud to be Papa J.
What is Papa J?
Well, that's what we call him, Papa J.
Papa Jimmy, Papa J. That's what the grandkids call him.
That's what we call him.
And I know Tide fans, I don't look old enough to be grandpa, but I am.
Yeah. Hold your comments, Tide fans. It's okay. So listen, I wanted to start the show off. I know this is a football show, but we got to give a shout out to the basketball team.
Of course.
You know, first time making it to the Final Four in the history of the program. I think that, you know, of course, they ran into the eventual champions in UConn and played pretty well. But we talked a lot about that. And Maurice, you can chime in as well. I don't think we had the guys to be able to overcome UConn's size and so eventually, you know, we lose. But you got to give a shout out to them. Nate Oates, really good job getting the kids to where they were this year.
First time Final Four. Of course, Nate Oates just recently signed an extension, got a big contract, top 4, top 5 highest paid basketball coaches in the country, which I think he deserves. Next is getting a new facility, which I've heard some chatter today that may be in the works finally. Anyway, yeah, shout out to the basketball team.
Yeah, so are we considered a basketball school now? Maurice, I mean,
we'll wait and see after this fall, right? Let's see how this fall goes.
Nate Oates' record to somebody else in the state. It's not far from where y'all are located. You'll be impressed at how much Oates has done in just the 5 years he's been at the university. So
yeah, I mean, all the expectation, was Auburn was going to go deep into the tournament and expected to reach the Final Four and have a chance and all that, and of course, wasn't a lot of talk about us at the time because I think we had a stretch there kind of late where we didn't play as well. We weren't playing very good defense and that sort of thing. And we turned it on a little bit after the SEC tournament.
And we've come a long way as a basketball program when our coach turns down Blue Blood Kentucky.
Yeah.
I mean, so anyway, that says a lot about where the program is right now.
So Tide fans, yes, this is a football show, and we're going to get into that. But I thought it was, justified to give University of Alabama basketball team a shout out and a good job on a good season and reaching the Final Four. So, Jimmy, I think the first question I have is to you. You'd been keeping up and telling us a little bit about the Washington O-line transfer, Parker Brailsford. Tell us what the story is there. I know there's probably some questions from some Tide fans because he's kind of been MIA in practices. So
he has certainly been MIA in practices. Matter of fact, he hadn't been at hardly any of them that I know of. He's missed both scrimmages. And honestly, there wasn't a whole lot other than that. I mean, it was rumored and people were speculating that he was not happy because he wasn't running with the ones and he was already getting ready to transfer back out. So all these things started floating around, on the web. And finally, our coach came out this weekend and put all that to bed. He basically said that, he's not going anywhere. He's just dealing with some personal things. Again, who knows what that means exactly. But as of right now, he's still on the team and he's not, transferring out as the rumors stated.
Maurice, Jimmy and I, we played some softball this weekend up in Tennessee, and we were talking. I did. But have you heard any more, Maurice, about Proctor? And at one point it was Proctor's coming back, and all of this stuff. But then that's kind of died down. Have you heard anything else, Maurice?
No, I was doing some research last night and this morning, and I haven't seen, even in a interview and with DeBoer last week from a local guy there that's made a name for himself, Josh Pate. with his sports talk show. And that was done last week. Haven't heard his name mentioned at all, which I guess technically he's not on the team. Jimmy, you may know the transfer status. I don't understand how you can transfer back in when the semester ends in a few weeks until after. But the portal, as you all know, opens Monday and runs for 2 weeks. So there'll be a lot of things taking place come Sunday and Monday.
I think that's one of the.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So actually, yes. Yeah. So Monday, we're going to start seeing a lot.
Yeah.
Regarding Proctor, I think we haven't really seen much or heard much because we've been in the middle of our spring and we're kind of concentrating on what we've got and working with these guys. We haven't heard anything, but as far as we know, he's still on his way back here, and I guess that will be announced, first part of next week when that portal opens.
Yeah, I just was curious. I know we had talked about it a couple of weeks ago on the show, and our opinions on whether or not we even wanted him back or what have you, and then it kind of got quiet, and I didn't hear anything. I hadn't seen anything, haven't read anything. So I just was curious if you guys had any insider information. I do agree, Jimmy, the portal opens next Monday, but do you guys expect, and Maurice, I'll start with you, what is your do you believe that we will see a lot of guys leave since we've had these spring practices and of course A-Day coming up this Saturday? What is your thought about our guys leaving and entering the portal?
I don't think you'll see as many, but yes, I think you'll see maybe 4 or 5. I really believe 1 or 2 of the quarterbacks will hit the door, and probably a wide receiver or 2 that's stuck down on the depth chart. And, previous staff really loaded up on linebackers and defensive linemen. So anybody hasn't moved up the depth chart that was highly recruited will be more than likely entering. I think the only position that you won't see leaving will be secondary.
Yeah. Right. Jimmy, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think we're going to lose a handful of guys, but I don't see it being anybody that's going to go, oh my gosh, I can't believe you just left. I think it'll be guys be like, Rick, who was that?
Right.
At least that's the way I hope it is anyway. Honestly, again, if what I'm reading is correct, I think we will be looking for some depth, not necessarily somebody to come in to start in the secondary. I think, we're still very fresh and young in the secondary with everybody we're losing. As far as experience goes, I am reading some good things about some guys that are out there into the spring. But I do fully believe we'll go hunting in the portal for secondary, offensive line. Even though Proctor's coming back, I think that's going to be another area we'll go look for. And really and truly, everywhere else, man, we're really good. Again, depending on who all starts jumping ship again. But right now, really, I think if we go or when we go to the portal, I think this is going to be more of a depth thing than versus trying to go find a starter.
Yeah, I think Saturday will probably be a picture of people that potentially will leave. I'm interested to see. I agree, Maurice. I don't think we'll lose maybe a handful of guys, and it'll be guys that you're not even going to know their names, so to speak. So I want to get into that with respect to some of the names that we've heard. So let's take a quick break. We'll come back and talk about that. Hold your seats, Tide fans. We'll be right back with Tide Talk.
With Beam's Internet, your binge never breaks. Seamless streaming, endless watching. Sign up today for 250 meg internet for $50 per month. Call 334-298-7000 or visit ctvbeam.com.
All right, welcome back, Tide fans. Right there at the break, we were talking about depth and who do we think would transfer in and out and et cetera. We've been hearing a lot about some particular players. Has there been a surprise, and I'll start with you this time, Jimmy. Has there been a surprise, a name that's kind of surprised you of somebody that you've heard that's been kind of showing out or been impressive? Is there anybody in particular that you can think of that you were maybe not anticipating?
I mean, not necessarily not anticipating really, but the names I'm hearing, Caleb Odom, I'm hearing his name a lot. The freshman coming in, tight end / probably wide receiver, because he kind of fits that big 6'5", 220 kind of wide receiver that DeBoer likes to have. Again, not really surprised based on all the hype around him and how good he potentially could be, but I am hearing his name on that side of the ball. Man, I'm hearing a lot of Ty Simpson. I know you mentioned quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised if we kept all 4 of them into the summer. But then again, I wouldn't be surprised if we lost one. And I think if we do, it would be Lonergan. It's Lonergan. I mean, I've heard a lot of things about Ty Simpson, how this offense kind of suits his abilities more so than the other quarterbacks we have, Milroe, for instance. So I'm hearing that name a lot on that side of the ball. Defensively, I know we just had our second scrimmage. I'm hearing a lot about the Keelan Keeley and
edge rusher,
the Rushaw out of Montgomery. I'm seeing their names a lot, and again from this past Saturday, one of our local kids, Mr. Red Morgan, apparently was a standout this past Saturday, and he's turning heads and running with the ones on defensive side. So, those are just a few names from this past Saturday that kind of stood out. But really, no surprises really to this point, honestly.
Maurice, anybody that surprised you or stood out that you didn't anticipate, or?
Nobody per se, because spring is really about self-development and, your ones versus twos and so forth and so on. What concerns me the most, and DeBoer mentioned it a couple of times in press conferences, and I was going to look it up, and I haven't seen where Washington stood in penalties. He mentioned that and he's very positive, so you don't hear any negativity out of him, but he did mention the fact that they're committing a lot of pre-snap penalties, which, I mean, we get frustrated during the season when we see that. So I'm kind of curious as to what the cause of that is. And he was saying that people are thinking instead of just reacting.
Yeah.
And if committing a lot of penalties in spring, and we'll see it Saturday, and you want the referees, that you hire to call it right, or, see whatever you see, because I've seen it before. It transitions into the season. It's a lack of discipline. It's a lack of focus. So right now, when I heard DeBoer mention that twice in 2 separate press conferences, it gives me a little cause for concern.
Yeah, and it's, for me, I kind of understand that. I mean, new system, you've got guys that are wanting to perform, they're wanting to impress, but they're also trying to learn some new, routes and systems and those types of things. So I can kind of see that. Now, yes, if that carries over, that will be concerning. But I kind of anticipated that, to be honest. Again, you can't really tell from DeBoer how significant that is. He does put a positive spin on that, but it is something that he has mentioned multiple times, is he'd like to see less penalties. He'd like to see guys, playing a little faster, not thinking as much. And so, right now, I get it. With guys trying to,
we really expect them to be playing fast, like you said. Like we're learning everything new,
especially on the offensive side of the ball.
From blocking scheme. I mean, the blocking scheme is different. We got a new offensive line coach. His blocking scheme is different. We got a new offensive coordinator. His offense is different. I mean, everything is different. So again, is it an excuse? Probably not. But I can see, like you said, whether they're thinking too much about the play, about who I'm supposed to block, and they just kind of forget, a snap count or whatever it might be. but you would think at this level that wouldn't be an issue. But one thing I want to say real quick too, and again, I know that was kind of a joke about from our center that we had issues with snaps from. The joke was Ryan Day mentioned when he went to Ohio State was that it was a cadence issue.
Right.
Right. That's why he was snapping the ball back. But saying that, could it be that there's a new cadence? Maybe there's a new way of calling out stuff that's DeBoer's way that, again, that's causing some confusion or causing some issues across the line. I don't know. I'm just wondering if maybe that has something to do with it.
Well, and Brockmeyer, who's currently, running with the ones from a center perspective, who's kind of been with the program, he seems to be doing really well. There's been some positive comments about him, and
the cadence isn't bothering his snaps.
Correct. I will comment that I liked hearing DeBoer's assessment of how the defense was really impressive, how aggressive they were, that we needed to make some pass blocking adjustments, and he wanted to see better pass blocking. It is a little different on the defensive side with respect to, knowing what your assignment is and just going at it at full speed, as opposed to, a receiver coming in motion and, when do you do that? When do you cut it off? Those types of things, laser and razor. And so, from an offensive side, I get it. And we don't know which one he was referring to, but
right.
I am,
and I did read too or hear that, there was some good on offense and some bad. There was some good on defense. I mean, like I said, the defense won a few plays, offense won a few plays, which is what you're going to see now, in the springtime. And so again, it's going to be interesting what OA Day is going to look like. That's for sure.
A lot of excitement about A Day.
But I will say this about the defense, and I'm sorry too. Again, those guys were flying all over the place, apparently, on Saturday. There were some licks. I've heard about, the stadium was empty, and I've heard, they were hitting so hard on some of them where you can just hear the echo of the pads and the helmets. And so I did read that the defense was playing downhill a lot on Saturday, which is kind of refreshing to hear too.
Maurice, you made the statement about the DBs in the backfield. Some of the things I've read has been certainly positive about some of those guys. The Saab guy coming from Michigan and Dominique Jackson, the Red Morgan from here in Phoenix City. Been some positive comments about the DB. So as I've always said, competition breeds excellence, and I think we're going to get to see that.
I agree. And I think going back to the portal question, you may see one or two. We talked about losing. I think we may pick up one or two others because DeBoer was asked about the portal.
Yeah.
And we definitely monitor the portal. And he did admit that the secondary is one obvious area that we need a little bit more depth in.
Yeah.
I want to see, what happens. You'll hear it Sunday or especially Monday as far as who might be interested in coming in. And I'm not knocking our previous DB coaches, but I thought sometimes their technique wasn't great. So I'm interested in seeing a change, and maybe this will be a little bit, it'll be different, but I hasten to say better and improvement, but I wouldn't be too surprised. The biggest concern I have as far as DeBoer coming into the SEC is playing defense. There's no question that the SEC has some of the tougher defenses because of depth and defensive line.
Right.
So this is going to be, we always talk about high school kids coming into college level and getting used to it. This too will be something new for DeBoer, especially on the defensive side, although he's an offensive-minded coach. But to be able to see players at this level, because he has never seen week in and week out this type of competition on that side of the ball. So
yeah. Let's take a quick break. Let's come back and talk. I got a couple of questions for you about QB1 and everybody's opinion. So we'll take a quick break. Hold your seats, Tide fans. Be right back with Tide Talk.
With Beams Internet, your binge never breaks. Seamless streaming, endless watching. Sign up today for 250 meg internet for $50 per month. Call 334-298-7000 or visit ctvbeam.com.
All right, Tide fans, welcome back. Last segment, I think you made a good point. We in the conversation about Proctor and Brailsford and Brockmeyer, and I think one thing that we failed to mention was the injury to Foster Roberts, the right guard. But I believe, Jimmy, you got a report that DeBoer came out and said it wasn't as bad as.
That's right. So he was carted off Saturday. And for those of you that don't know, he was our
starting right guard.
He eventually became our starting right guard. And once he got to that spot, our offensive line was completely different looking.
Yeah.
So you could argue he was our most valuable offensive lineman about halfway through the season. He was carted off the field, lower leg injury. Nobody really knew how severe. Thankfully, what I read was it was just kind of a sprain to the ankle. There's no damage anywhere. He actually had hopes of coming back and playing Saturday. I'll be very surprised if they let him.
Yeah.
So we did kind of miss one there, thankfully. So he should come back without any issues, but I believe fully that he'll miss this coming Saturday. But we did dodge a bullet there for sure. And then another one that we haven't really talked about is, we had a severe injury to one of our returning playmakers, Hale, on the offensive side.
That's right.
As well in the receiver. He was in line to kind of step up and take a role there, and we'll be lucky to see him back on the field this fall because he completely tore his knee up.
And Tide fans, for the record, if you don't recognize the name, Hale was the receiver that caught a big touchdown pass in last year's game against Ole Miss from Jalen Milroe, and it was a big time in the game. He had not seen a lot of time at that point, that came up with a very big touchdown reception in that game. So that Jalen Hill is who we're referencing. I believe he was number 14, if I'm not mistaken.
I can remember the number.
But yeah, injuries are part of the game, part of football, but I want to take that as it relates to the offensive line. Maurice, I don't know if you've read comments about how Milroe looked in this past scrimmage and some of the things. Do you think that has any impact? The offensive line, you heard DeBoer talk about he wished he'd see better pass protection. Does that impact Jalen Milroe and his performance, especially in the mid-range game?
Well, I think it would affect any QB, but I hope in Jalen's maturity that he becomes more comfortable and more accustomed. And I said this a few weeks ago, and it's no offense to the previous stats. Jalen hasn't had a quarterback's coach, I think, the whole time he's been there. No disrespect. Reese, and I really don't care for, if it offends Bill O'Brien, but no offense. But he hasn't had a QB coach. And going back and watching Penix last year at Washington, he would have all-out blitzes from whatever side, and he was able to he knew where to go immediately. That's coaching. And I think Jalen think and hope that he's probably got some of the best coaching for this position that he's had since he's been at the university.
Agreed.
So I think, and I saw heard his comments about the offensive line. I get it. And that's kind of what you want to give and take. You don't want to give too much because that, means your offensive line is confused. But I think based on, and I heard from the last scrimmage, and Jimmy can correct me, but I heard Jalen had an outstanding day in passing. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't throw a pick. So that to me tells me he's more comfortable with it now. I don't know what the stats are as far as sacks or really in completions, but picks is pretty big.
So, it's funny because I was talking to Shawn on the way back from that softball tournament.
Out me or what?
Yeah, that too.
That's what it was.
These scrimmages have been somewhat closed, right? But you always got people in there, and I do follow several quote unquote insiders. But if all three of us are watching a scrimmage, your take on the scrimmage is going to be different than Shawn's and mine's, and vice versa. So it's like,
of course, mine's the one that matters.
So it really depends on kind of who you're reading. But I will say this: I saw and read that Milroe was the only one that threw an interception Saturday. There was one; it was by Milroe. The couple of guys that were there that I read said that he had the worst day of the quarterbacks. That again, Ty Simpson had the best day. Was getting rid of the ball faster. Was hitting his receivers.
Again, but who was he going against? I mean, was he going against?
I'm getting there.
We were coming with that.
There.
Settle down, Spark.
But regardless if you're going against ones and twos, I mean, what I read was Milroe was hanging onto the ball too long, and he had no touches on those intermediate short passes. He was throwing all fastballs, and he was missing a lot of receivers. And Ty Simpson had the better day. So, and again, I'm not saying Ty Simpson's about to win this job. I mean, honestly, I want Milroe to be the starting quarterback. I mean, and there's probably a good chance he still will be. But this past Saturday, again, depending on who was there and which one of those guys that you're reading report from, what I've read was Ty Simpson had the better day. But
perception. I mean, again, I think Jimmy brings up a good point. I may have a different opinion about something that he sees differently. And you're right, Maurice. I don't care what you say. It's different running against the ones than running against the twos.
That's right.
Otherwise, the twos would be the ones.
And Simpson was running against the twos. He ran against the ones a couple of times. Most of the time, he was against the twos.
So there is a difference there. But it's going to be interesting. You said it a few weeks ago, and I agreed with you, and I'll comment again. Milroe has been an athlete. He's going to learn, in my opinion, how to be a quarterback. He has been a guy that was freakishly athletic, super talented, had his legs, could throw the deep ball. We all saw last year where he struggled hitting the intermediate throws. Everybody commented on that. We know it.
And even seeing the intermediate. I mean, there was times we had guys running wide open underneath. And never saw them.
So he is going to be a better quarterback this year. And I will say, for the 100th time, I hope that Ty Simpson looks good. I hope that Lonergan looks good and that Austin Mack looks good, because competition will make you better. And, Jalen Milroe seems to be the guy that, embraces that and just will get better because of it. Before we wrap up, Maurice, you got anything to say with respect to that? Got any comment?
I mean, we will see, on Saturday, and indecision is indecision, but it'll be interesting to see how everything falls out. I think everybody, it's like the old saying, everybody's in love with the second string quarterback. So I would say ease up, let it play out. I still think it's Milroe.
Yeah. So what time's the game Saturday? 3 o'clock?
3 o'clock, maybe 3 o'clock Eastern.
Tide fans, A-Day will be this Saturday. It will be aired live on ESPN. I believe it's at 3 Eastern.
Check your guide.
I could be wrong. We will come back next week. We'll talk about that because I'm sure we'll all be watching. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to talking to you next week. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.